support for the Irish Eighth Amendment. There's an attempt to repeal the Eighth Amendment to the Irish Constitution, and this is just a rally to show our support for it. So with that, I'm going to allow you to speak now.
Great, thank you. Who's this?
Better introduce yourself,
Hello.
C.J. Doyle.
I think you all know me. My name is C.J. Doyle, and I'm the Executive Director of the Catholic Action League of Massachusetts. And all four of my grandparents are Irish. They came from Ireland. And they were, at the time, involuntary subjects of the United Kingdom. That was before Irish independence. For anyone in the pro-life movement, this is obviously a source of great concern that Ireland has such an outstanding reputation, outstanding legislation, an outstanding constitution on the protection of innocent human life, should contemplate repealing this provision. It's certainly something that would be a tragedy for that country, and it's a heartbreak for any of us who have any kind of Irish descent or Irish connection. What's going on is this: the Eighth Amendment to the Irish Constitution was passed in 1983 in response to the X case. That was a case of a girl who threatened suicide if she was not able to procure an abortion. And what the Eighth Amendment did was it recognized in the Irish Constitution an equal right to life of the unborn child and their mother, and that right would be vindicated in Irish law and in Irish public policy. And it is at the time when the entire European Union has embraced a regime of legal abortion, Ireland has been the sole, solitary, and really quite heroic standout. Now, the movement to repeal, which comes, after the legalization of same-sex marriage, is an attempt to do two things. One is it's going to allow unrestricted abortion up to 12 weeks. And then it's going to allow abortion in supposedly, theoretically, in certain cases, involving the life or health of the mother, up to 24 weeks, up to 6 months. But in fact, it's going to have the coach and six, the Mack truck exception, that the health of the mother will include the mental health of the mother. So anyone who claims that they're going to be distressed, emotionally distressed, they're going to be depressed, they're going to suffer from any kind of psychological disorder will be allowed to have an abortion. So what this amendment will do is it will essentially allow abortion on demand up to 6 months of pregnancy. Now again, this is an absolute tragedy for Ireland. Ireland, for 16 centuries, for more than 60 generations, has been a nation of Christian faith and civilized morals. It's been a nation that has protected human life from conception to natural death, innocent human life. It's a peaceful country. Ireland has never invaded a neighbor, colonized another country, waged an unjust war, used weapons of mass destruction, targeted civilians in wartime. It's a country that's respected human rights. Every single Irish Catholic member of the House of Commons followed Daniel O'Connell in voting to abolish slavery in the British Empire in 1833. So this is a country that has respected life, has respected human rights. And again, for those of us who are Irish, this is not only a tragedy, it's a heartbreak. It's just appalling that they would even be considering this. But of course, this is the influence of the European Union. This is the influence of American multinational corporations. This is the influence of the media. And of course, the Irish media is essentially an ancillary, a satellite of the British media. And the Irish media, by the way, are not only ideologically liberal, but they have a personal, financial, and professional interest in liberalism because Ireland is a small country. If they want to prosper and go up career-wise in the media, they want to go to London. So they want to embrace the values of the British media. This is, by the way, why Eamon de Valera, people accuse the late President Eamon de Valera of being a romanticist because he wanted to revive the Irish language. He did so for a very calculating purpose. He felt that as long as Ireland was an English-speaking country, it would be dominated by the English press and by the English media. So I think the message we want to convey to our brothers and sisters in Ireland and to our cousins and friends is that not to repeat the terrible mistakes and the terrible tragedy that's afflicted Britain, that's afflicted the United States, that's afflicted Canada in legalizing abortion. First of all, what happened in America when abortion was legalized? We had perhaps, according to one Senate study, perhaps 100,000 illegal abortions in the U.S. Prior to Roe versus Wade. That number rose to 1.5 million. So that's a 15-fold increase in the number of abortions. America has had more than 60 million surgical abortions since Roe versus Wade. If you look at the number of chemical abortions, so-called medical abortions, is known only to God, but maybe by several factors of multiples higher than that. So if we compare that to Ireland, 45 years, America with more than 60 million abortions, it's likely that if this abortion regime goes through, Ireland may have over 1 million abortions in the next 4 decades. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy. This is the mass destruction of innocent human life. But it's not just abortion, it's not just the destruction of innocent human life. It will also endanger the elderly, it will endanger the disabled, it will endanger the chronically sick. Once you replace an objective and immutable standard, the standard of the sanctity and dignity of innocent human life from conception to natural death, with a subjective and capricious and arbitrary standard, the standard of quality of life, then the disabled are in danger, the elderly are in danger, the chronically sick are in danger. The Netherlands already has active euthanasia. We are fighting on a state-by-state basis so-called physician-assisted suicide here in the United States. So it will endanger the elderly. It will victimize women. We don't have statistics of how many women are injured from abortion, but many women are physically injured from abortion. They expose themselves to various, they become sterile after abortions. And even the ones that are not physically injured suffer spiritually, they suffer morally, they suffer psychologically. So abortion will not only kill tens of thousands of Irish children, hundreds of thousands of Irish children. It will victimize women, it will endanger the elderly, it will endanger the disabled, it will endanger the chronically sick. It will also oppress consciences and imperil religious freedom and imperil freedom of speech, as we all know here. It took just 8 years in Massachusetts to go from Roe versus Wade to Moe versus Hannity, the state Supreme Court decision, which held that the public funding of abortion is a constitutional right under the Massachusetts Constitution, at least for the indigent. And of course, since the repeal of the Doyle-Flynn law in 1996, we now have taxpayer-funded abortions for state, county, and municipal employees also. So the consciences of the taxpayers will be oppressed and will be violated by this. Ireland already has a system of national health. So I think one of the questions we must ask ourselves is, how soon will the public funding of abortion become normative in Ireland, again forcing taxpayers to subsidize a practice which they understand to be mass murder. It will oppress consciences in other ways. We've seen, of course, constant controversies over conscience clauses here in America. Groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, which is an anti-Catholic hate group, has repeatedly sued to oppose conscience protections for doctors, for nurses, for medical technicians, for hospital administrators. You'll recall that the former Attorney General in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Martha Coakley, said that if you're a practicing Catholic, you ought not to work in a hospital emergency room. This is a chilling restriction on the rights of conscience, on religious freedom, and of course it will result in discrimination against Catholics, Christians, and other religious believers and all pro-life citizens. We already have a situation here in America where pharmacists are regularly forced to violate their consciences. There was a case in the state of Washington in federal court, Stormans versus Weissman. It went to the federal district court, the federal appellate court. The U.S. Supreme Court sadly declined to hear it, which meant the appellate court ruling stood, which forces pharmacists to distribute Plan B, the morning after pill, and they have no conscience protections, no legal protections. They can be fired from their jobs. Senator Cory Boockman, Democrat of New Jersey, has filed a bill called Access to Birth Control, which would again codify this appellate court decision in federal law, again forcing pharmacists to distribute Plan B or be fired. So already, if you are a Christian, if you're a Catholic, if you're pro-life, you're a pharmacist in the United States, you have essentially you've forfeited your First Amendment religious freedom protections. You've forfeited the state has forfeited your rights of conscience. So we're looking at something that will imperil religious freedom, and not just on an individual level, but on an institutional level. Again, the ACLU has constantly sued Catholic hospitals, trying to force them to perform abortions, and they claim these are emergency procedures. Of course, the ACLU has also sued Catholic hospitals to perform sterilizations and tubal ligations. Now, what sterilization is an emergency procedure?
Yes.
This is clearly an attempt to drive Christians, to drive the Catholic Church out of the healthcare out of the healthcare profession. Right. We've already seen rumors that Mater Hospital in Dublin has been forced to participate in an abortion at Catholic hospital. This will end Catholic, authentic Catholic medicine in Ireland. It will imperil the rights of Catholic institutions. We've also seen in this country that the government school system has become an instrument of indoctrination on the issue of the right to life, where students are being told without the consent, without, in some cases without the knowledge of their parents, that contraceptives, including abortifacients, are morally acceptable, are necessary to prevent pregnancy, and ought to be embraced. So you have the entire government school system essentially propagandizing against the right to life. How soon will that happen in Ireland? So we've seen many, many things, and of course it will depress morals, it will deprave morals. Contraception was the principal enabling agent of the sexual revolution. It allowed society to separate the primitive and the procreative aspects of human sexuality. Abortion is the ultimate form of birth control, which means that this will encourage and increase carnal relations outside and before marriage. So again, what are the results of abortion? Well, again, the destruction of hundreds of thousands, in this country, tens of millions of innocent human lives, the endangerment of the elderly, the ill, the chronically ill, the disabled, the imperiling of religious freedom of Catholic institutions and individuals, the perversion of public and private morality, and of course the oppression of consciences. So we would beg our friends in Ireland, we would beg our relations in Ireland, we would beg the country of our ancestry not to embrace the fatal errors of Britain and of America and of Canada. You know, Ireland, as I said, has been a peaceful country. It's a country that's respected human life. What a pity and a paradox. What an irony and what an unspeakable sorrow were they to embrace the values of those who persecuted them, were they to embrace the values of those who victimized them. Ireland is not only compromising its faith and its heritage, but its national identity, its very sovereignty. And this is a road, this will not be an end, this will be a beginning of a revolution. And by the way, every moral and cultural revolution has no legitimacy in the eyes of the people. It's opposed to the habits of the nation. It's opposed to customary rights, which means it can only be enforced through force, through coercion, and that means an increase in state power. So we will increase secularization. We'll also corrupt the church, by the way. We've already seen in this country our prelates, our Catholic institutions, our priests making peace with the abortion culture, giving awards, honors, and platforms in violation of their own principles and specific policies to those who support legal abortion. This will happen again in Ireland. And the Catholic hierarchy, which is already notorious in Ireland for its weakness and for its stupidity, will of course probably collaborate with this culture, and that would be a great pity. So it will result in the de-Christianization of the country. One last thing. Ireland, though its natality is stronger than most nations, still does not have a reproductive birth rate. It's 1.95 children per family. You need at least 2.1 to have a reproductive birth rate. Ireland, if you have abortion, this will further depress natality, it will further depress fertility. It means that the Irish birth rate will continue to decline. And how will that be made up? Hawaii. Thank you. And how will it be made up? Through more immigration and through more migrants, which will further de-Christianize the country and de-Westernize the country. Ireland is committing suicide here, and we need to help. We need to cry out to them and beg them to stop. So it was. We don't wish to impose any views on others. We just wish to warn them of the tragedy that has befallen America and other Western countries, and beg them on our hands and knees not to make the mistake our own countries have made, and to stand firm for the right to life and for their own traditions and their own heritage and their own faith, which they ought to be proud of, rather than think of repudiating. They ought to uphold it, and they ought to be proud to be an exception in the rest of the EU. So, again, we can pray for Ireland. We can let the Irish people know, and I just urge everyone to please remember Ireland in your prayers. Say the Rosary for Ireland. Offer up prayers and sacrifices for Ireland. And let anybody know, that those of you that have relatives, that those of you that have friends in Ireland, that this will be a tragedy of unspeakable proportion. So thank you all for listening. And Antonio, if you want to say anything else.
Thank you, CJ.
General know we're here, or will they